Hello everyone, welcome back once again to the joy of Japanese business, Japan Business Time with
Rochelle Kopp.
and another exciting episode today. Actually, we've got a topic that, Rochelle, you're a real expert on to begin with. The subject is from KNS TV. So thank you very much for the subject request. And the question is, we got a bunch of topics, requests around this. What do we see as being the future for the Japanese labor market, which is going through some huge changes right now?
It is, yes, and it's hard to know what's going to happen.
It is hard to know, but Rochelle's going to tell us, so
Okay.
you're going to know after this.
Okay, well, we'll do that.
Okay, hang around, you won't want to miss this. Of the dramatic changes, many changes that are going through the Japanese economy at the moment, maybe nothing bigger in terms of impact on society. As big as the aging society, or bigger, is the change to the whole fundamental changes that have been happening probably since Koizumi, probably since about 2002,
Right.
to the whole employment framework in Japan.
Right, exactly. So maybe we should start out and talk about what it was traditionally.
Yeah, well,
Okay, traditionally Japan had the Shushin Koyo Seido, which is the lifetime employment system, or custom, so to speak, where the majority of people worked for the same company for their entire career. And so this led to a lot of stability, and you didn't have people running around and switching jobs. You didn't have companies laying people off. And everything was very kind of picture perfect and nice, or people would like to believe it was anyways. So that was the traditional setup.
and this was based on, particularly post-war, you have to understand labor unions in Japan and socialism. I mean, socialism in Japan was very strong.
Yes.
And Japan very nearly, under MacArthur, very nearly democratically became communist at one point. And it was around that time. And MacArthur, for being this kind of famous hard-nosed American military general, was incredibly liberal with a lot of the reforms that he put in under the GHQ administration, which included these very strong employment protections, which like the pacifist constitution and all these other real hippie, lovey-dovey things that got put in, got absolutely cemented into the fabric of the society, and have had this really deep impact. So these things really have been the same since the 50s.
Yes, exactly. And served the country pretty well during the high growth period, because companies had stable group of employees, they could invest in them, people could feel that sense of belongingness to a company, and so it kind of played on deep themes in Japanese society, and everyone kind of liked it. And the thing is, things are now changing, and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of people still see that was the ideal and want it to still be that way.
And I'll just say one other interesting thing was there was a survey by NHK. I remember reading about 3 or 4 years ago, at a time when there were some activists, like foreign shareholder funds that were being very activist with some Japanese companies trying to get them to change. And the NHK did a survey: who owns the company? And of course, it's the shareholders, number one.
Right.
But they I think the choices were the shareholders, the company executives, or the employees. And the overwhelming majority of normal LDP voting, conservative, hardworking, Japanese, the vast majority in this NHK survey assume that the employees own the company.
Wow. They missed Economics 101, I guess.
Well, they did, but you have to understand
But
this is
that's the mindset,
so
right?
deeply ingrained.
Yes.
That's what you have to understand, and that's
Right.
why the employees work with everybody, and why people are so hostile to these activist shareholder funds that were coming in.
Right, exactly.
So let's talk about the changes. Well,
Okay.
It's pretty much since Koizumi came in. What were the problems that they wanted to address, and what are the changes that are happening now?
Well, the big downside of having this stable group of employees is that they become a big fixed cost.
Yeah.
And you can't let them go, and then things change, and you don't need this group of people. What are you going to do with them? And you get crazy things like the steel company that doesn't need to make as much steel in Japan anymore. What is it going to do with all the people who make the steel? It opens an amusement park, and they go work at the amusement park.
Right.
I mean, really, that literally happens. So that
Sounds great.
yeah. For the steelworkers, maybe it was a good deal, but the idea is that the companies would have to sort of turn themselves inside out to find ways to utilize the employees they have. But as the global economy, the winds of change blew into Japan as tariff barriers fell and more economic integration with the rest of the world, it's becoming harder for Japanese companies to maintain these large fixed costs. It's so inflexible.
Maybe a point on the timing. The bubble basically ended, I think it's fair to say, about 1994, or that's when it was.
Right.
That's when the burst started, and in that time, all these Japanese companies were constantly heading towards bankruptcy and desperately trying to turn around and failing.
Right.
It wasn't until after Koizumi came in 2002. So you're talking 8 years of Japan's biggest companies, and some of the banks actually collapsing, and some of these. And this real fear that there'll be mass social disruption, that
Right.
these companies would sink under the weight of their business costs.
Right.
So it sounds, I appreciate it. It sounds horrible, and it sounds nice trying to save the employees, and it sounds horrible that they have to get rid of these costs and you don't call them people.
Right.
But you're literally going to lose everybody.
If you don't do something.
If you couldn't be more flexible with the employees, you couldn't save you could save the company. Rather than lose everybody, if you could be more flexible with the labor pool. And there was no ability to be flexible, and this is what Japanese companies started lobbying the government, that they wanted the ability to be more flexible,
Right.
even just for a little bit, just on a little temporary basis.
Right, exactly.
And that's how it started.
Right.
And so what are the changes that have been happening?
Well, I mean, I think, it's still really difficult to let employees go, but it's a little bit easier than it was.
Yeah.
And then also, companies are allowed to hire people who are not these permanent employees.
Yeah.
And so you've seen this huge increase in people who are contingent workers
Yes.
on various types of contracts. And companies can hire and fire those people much more easily, and also they don't pay them as much and they don't give them as much benefits.
Yeah.
Which is really great for the companies, but the problem is it's really not so great for those employees.
And it has some social impacts as well. From
Really
that, which are
big
coming through.
social impacts, because those people tend to not get the same training as the permanent employees. They don't get established in a career. They don't make as much money. And then a lot of them don't get married and they don't have children.
Yeah.
And so long term, it's actually really not good for Japanese society. So at least in my opinion, that probably wasn't a really good way to address this, because what they were trying to do is let's preserve the traditional system, but then have some people who are outside it.
Yeah.
But then you get this two-tier thing
Well,
that
that's very
just
much,
it just really destroys people's motivation, and it's not using well those people who are in the contingent group.
And what's really started to happen as well, this system was sold to the public by the government as this is just going to be for a small, no more than 10% of the workforce, and for allowing a bit of fluidity, a bit of flexibility.
And it got way out of hand.
And it's already at 45% of new
Right.
employees. And it's not that there still isn't possible to fire the lifetime employees, or it's very, very difficult to do so. But because of, in a way, again, it's like the same problem in Europe. It's because of these, protected employees.
You have other ones who don't get a good deal. Yeah, it is very much like what you get in Europe, actually.
Yeah.
It's a similar problem.
It's the new hires get the bum end of that, where a lot of companies are not even hiring full employees anymore. They're hiring everyone in these contracts,
Right.
and it is creating this generation of young people who. Well, it's got two really interesting impacts. The first is the one that you said, that people don't feel they have the economic security to make the lifetime steps that society relies upon.
Right.
The other is that they are not anywhere near as committed to the companies that they're joining.
Right.
You joining a company in the old days was marrying that company. Your
Right.
whole family, you're expected to marry in the company. You're expected to.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, why would you, for a company that's not giving you any sort of protection or anything like that? What would
Why
stop
would you care? You don't have, and actually one of the big things that I write about a lot is low engagement in Japanese firms. Well,
Yeah.
you're not going to be engaged when you feel like you're being treated by dirt,
Yeah.
like dirt, right?
Well, but there's an interesting turning point that's also happening with this now, which is that I've read something how a lot of these contracted workers actually feel, and I've seen blogs and so on being written about this in Japanese now, they actually feel that they're in the better position.
Interesting.
And this is kind of a turnaround, but it's because they have this flexibility. And one, because they're cheaper than the regular employees, they're actually safer and they're less likely to come under pressure.
Right.
Because the company wants to expand the number of them.
Right, yeah.
And having this sort of freedom, which people didn't think they had before, it is having this effect of making the labor market more fluid, which was the overall goal. And the thing is, there are people in government now who are saying now out loud, which I'm sure they were thinking back in 2002, but now they are saying this out loud. Hey, maybe it should be 100%.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, and that's what I'm thinking, that you should probably just throw out the old system and put in some system where everyone has some sort of flexibility.
Yeah.
That would maybe be a little bit more like the U.S. employment at will.
Yeah.
But the thing is I wrote an article where I talked about that on the Japanese Huffington Post.
Yeah.
You would not believe
think
the
I saw.
people who went crazy.
Hey,
Yeah, like, because
This
that's
is-
a sacred cow. Like, everyone aspires to be that Seishine,
Yeah.
the permanent employee. Don't take that dream away from us. It's really, people are very emotionally committed to that.
well, that's a sacred zone. That's Article 9 of the Constitution. It's guns in America, frankly. It's, you don't mess with lifetime employment.
It is kind of like that, but the problem is it's going to strangle the economy. The system right now is so... Companies are just so distorted around the labor laws that they have that it's just the distortions are tying the economy in knots, basically.
Yeah, and the fact as well that the system, it relies upon renewal. It relies on hiring new employees with people going out at 65, and that there is this kind of travelator as well. And the problem is now you have these companies. Well, one, the pension system is not going to last.
Right.
Nobody thinks it's going to last.
Right. You can't have everyone still quitting at 60.
At 65
yeah.
and living to be 90 and being
Right.
healthy through all of that.
Right,
Again,
and also, why not utilize all that brain power?
yeah,
It's wasted.
And all these people
Right.
want to work. They end up in supermarket car parks. And
I
stuff
know
like
it's such
that.
a waste.
And these are people who can be working, and this is where maybe having a more flexible employment system means that those people could go and that
Well, if people's positions and what they were paid
Yeah.
were based on what they could actually contribute,
Right.
rather than what abstract category they're in.
right.
And actually, the Abe government is trying to do something. It's called, they're calling it equal pay for equal work, which
Yeah.
is a little bit different than the U.S. version of that.
Yeah.
But the idea is that your pay would be based on what you're actually doing, not on your category.
Yeah.
And I think that that's a good step. It's
Ups
a
and
tricky
downs.
one.
It is a tricky one because, of course, people view that with suspicion. At the same time, they see this is a way just to lower everyone's pay.
Well, that's the problem, is that everyone is very... Anything that the government tries to do to change the employment system, people view as, well, they're just doing it to hurt us.
Yeah.
And also, people's trust in companies and their HR departments is really low. And in fact, there's been global
It's really
surveys,
amazing.
Japan is the absolute lowest.
And this
Yeah.
is something that surprised me. When I came to Japan, even in the 90s, people's attachment and loyalty to companies. I would be in my homestay family, which was a Konica family. They worked in Konica, and one day there was some, because Hachioji is all Konica, they can't sell Fujifilm video cassette. I remember they were on sale, and I was like, well, I don't care. Geez, it's cheap. I'm going to buy some Fujifilm stuff. And I brought it home, and man, I got some. I think I had to throw them. I wasn't allowed to show them in the living room. I got some real.
Wow, interesting.
So people used to be so loyal, and I assumed, I was taken aback by seeing how disconnected Japanese have become on loyalty to their own companies.
Right, and that goes on to all sorts of other problems of Japan's productivity is very low, and all the things I write about. And we're not going to get into it now, but it's a huge issue, right?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. So
we should probably wrap this one up.
We should wrap this
actually.
one up. But so the future is no question. It's going to need to keep changing. I think the market's going to need to change partly to allow more flexibility and partly to keep. The whole aim is to make more people productive, to let women work, to let elderly people work.
And to be able to have people work in different ways,
Yeah.
rather than everyone has to be exactly the same.
Yeah.
Right.
But who knows where it's going to go? It's hard to say, but what's certain is you're going to see more changes, and it's a fascinating area.
And it's
a
going
good
to
area
continue to
watch.
be a hot topic, definitely.
And Rochelle's one of the best people to follow for that. So, yes, that's a great topic, actually. And you can tell we could do a whole series just on that.
Yeah.
But we have more for this series, so come and join us again, same time next week.
Yes, exactly.
And see you soon. Peace.